Hi, I'm Brandon, and today I'm going to show you how to side a wall that has drops in it. And this is a little bit more of a tricky scenario, so I'm going to do the best I can to explain this and be as detailed as I can and as concise as I can for you guys. So the first thing we want to do is establish a baseline for your siding. What I mean by a baseline is find out where the majority of your foundation is flat on the first floor level, which would be right here on this house. This is new construction. It's a little easier to tell where your baseline is going to be. On the older house, it might not be so straightforward. But this is the bottom of the first floor. You have your floor joist and everything resting on top of this. And that continues throughout the whole house, all the way around. And right here we have our first drop. The baseline of your house is where you're going to use your starter strip. And that's a piece that's going to look something like this. And what I do is I hang it down 1 inch from the top of the foundation. So that's about where it's going to go. And that'll be all the way around this house. And now where it gets tricky is where it drops down. So the first thing you need to know after you've figured that out is what type of siding you have. What's your reveal on the siding? You can see that this siding has a clip on the bottom here and then a receiving clip on the top. And these will clip together just like that. You need to know the measurement from there to there. And usually they're 8 inches. Sometimes you'll have 10 inches. Sometimes it'll be 5. So that's the reveal of your siding. Right there we have 8 inches. And another thing to note is how these things are clipping together. I've had batches of siding where the clip here is overbent and it actually holds it down on the other piece. So sometimes you can lose up to 1/8 inch on a piece, and sometimes I've actually gained a 1/16. And that's important when you're transferring your measurements down on the wall to make a mental note of how much you're losing on each piece or how much you're gaining on each piece. So it would make sense to clip a few pieces together, maybe 3 or 4 pieces together, and measure them overall. That way you can be sure that you're either staying true to 8 inches or 10 inches or whatever it is you're trying to hit. These ones have been staying pretty true, so I'm going to be able to run with an 8-inch layout. So now that we know we have 8-inch courses, what I want to do is measure these drops. Now I've seen people use levels on this, and you could do that. You could go over there and hold your tape 1 inch down and then mark a level line all the way across, but typically I go with the top of foundation to figure this out. New construction foundations are shot with a laser. They're a little bit more consistent. So you're usually pretty safe using the top of foundation. Figuring off the top of foundation, we want to measure what this drop is right here. And I already measured this one, and I know it's 23.5. So we're actually a 1/2 inch off. So what I did is I dropped my corner down another 1/2 inch. So now our starter is going to be hanging down 1.5 inches right here, and it's going to be 1 inch down over there. So that made up the difference. Now we're going to come around this corner. The next thing we need to know is how tall your starter strip is. I've seen starter strip be 2 1/4 tall. I've seen starter strip as big as 2 3/4. They even make a vinyl starter strip, and I'm not sure how big that is. Word of advice, I wouldn't use the vinyl starter strip. I don't like it. It's floppy. This aluminum holds a lot better, or galvanized steel even. So we're going to measure here, and we have 2.5 inches, a little short of 2.5 inches. And what I'm going to do is measure up on the corner 2 5/8, and I already made my mark there. And I set a nail there. And what that's going to do is it's going to bring my siding a little bit up inside the corner. I've seen people hang their corners way down an inch or even 5 inches. Some people don't cut them off, but I think it looks nice and tidy if you have the siding just a little bit up inside there. So now that we have that mark there, and you can see I already have a line chalked, but I'm going to go through that again for you. This is something, again, you could do with a level. You could level it all the way across if you wanted. And I've seen people do this. They'll level this whole thing all the way across. And it's a bit of work to do with a level. And you can end up with an accumulative error. Where if your mark is a little off here or there, by the time you get to the end, you could be an inch off. Another word of advice, if you're going to use the level to do that, actually rotate your level each time you go. That way, if you happen to have a level that's not true, it'll actually kind of work its way out across the whole length of your house. But obviously, if your level is, more than a 1/16 off, you don't want to do that. 1/16 would be about the max, I would say. 1/8 inch, throw that thing away and buy a good level. So we're just doing this with the chalk line, and we're just measuring these drops, and we're hoping that this foundation isn't poured way out of whack there and way out of whack down there. And like I said, new construction are usually pretty good. Now what we're going to do is we're going to measure these drops here, and right there we have 24 inches. That's on layout. And then down here, this one is 36. So that's actually in the middle of a piece of siding, and that's not great for clipping the siding in. You can't have 4 inches off. It needs to be on the 8-inch increment. So what that means is I'm going to have to use J-channel or undersill down here all the way across, or J-channel or undersill all the way across this section. My choice right now is to do starter up here, starter right here, because that's 24 inches. That's on an 8-inch increment. And then I'll use J-channel coming down here and across there. Here's what the pieces look like all clipped together. And just for sake of demonstration, I'm showing you how this will look when it's on the wall. And you can see down at the bottom here, that bottom is missing by 4 inches, and that's what I was talking about. And that's why we'll have to use J-channel on the bottom there. I did do a different video where I cut the bottom off and I made little tabs, but on a section this long, I wouldn't feel comfortable making those little tabs, and I would want to use J-channel, and like I said, some people use undersill, and that looks okay as well. The next step is to add the drops together. We had 2 foot and then we had 3 foot. So we had 5 feet worth of drops exactly. That's the exact measurement. So we know we were hanging down 1.5 inches on the other end of the wall. So what I did is I set my corner down 1.5 inches down here as well. So we know our starting points are the same, and all I need to do is hook this corner and measure up my 5 foot, because that's the drops, and then add the 2 5/8 that we added down there to get to the top of the starter strip. And you can see right here my line is chalked at 5 foot 2.5, and that gets us the top of the starter all the way across. So this chalk line has a hook on it, and I put the hook facing away from the wall, that way it can get a lot tighter. I have my nail angled this way. And again, I'm just going to let this thing hang. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be careful not to drag my line across that nail, because it's really going to tear my line up and it's not going to last very long if I do that. So I'm going to pull slack and then hold it and then loop it around and then let it hang, and the weight of the line will keep it from slipping. I got it tight against the wall now, and you can sight down it to see how much it's drooping. And then you come to the middle and you do what's called thumbing the line. You make sure it's not hung up on anything, just kind of pull it out, make sure, take a look down there and down here, make sure there's no little burrs in your Tyvek, your house wrap, that's going to hold the line down or up. So you just pull it out, but don't snap it. And then just push it to the wall and roll it up a little bit, about how much you saw the sag, and then you snap either side. And that's how you thumb your line, and that's how you're going to get a nice straight line for your siding to start. Masons do it all the time. It's called trigging a line, and carpenters say thumbing a line because you're usually using your thumb. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get all our starter on. And on the sections where it drops down, right here, and down across the rest of that, we're going to put little pieces. And I've shown another way to handle drops. That's in my longer video that had part 1, 2, and 3. And from that video, I worked up from the lowest point and went and just met this point perfect right here. But let me show you a different method that'll almost guarantee that's going to get you a straight line when you hit that point, and it's a little bit easier to do, and arguably might actually be faster, although I'm going to waste a little bit of starter. You could use scraps of siding in lieu of starter strip, but just for the sake of this demonstration, I'm going to use little bits of starter strip. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to put these things, well, I'll start maybe a foot away from that edge there, and I'm going to just nail it right on my line. Make sure I can't twist. And I'll do these about every 2 feet. And that's going to get me something to clip my piece of siding in. And I'm actually going to start up here with my siding, and then I'll tie in the bottom later. And putting all those on, it just guarantees you're going to end up with this perfectly straight line. If you go down the end there and you sight down it, you'll see that it's actually true. And because this is where the siding's actually going to be clipped in to this, I'm going to keep a full piece here. It's okay to have a gap between the starter strips. Here I'll have maybe a 3-inch gap. And as long as your siding doesn't hit the gap on the joint, you're in pretty good shape. So here we go with the first row of siding. And we're just making sure to feel for all those pieces of starter and make sure we don't miss any. Right there, I missed one. So you need to push it into the wall and up at the same time. And this one's actually, the clip is built enough so that it actually grabs onto it and I can let go. And sometimes the clips aren't built that rounded and they'll just fall out if you let go of it. And now it's time to just nail this on. It's like E. Pro tip, your siding's actually not supposed to be all the way inside the corner and against it tight. It's supposed to be a 1/4 inch away. On the longer pieces, I say are in the field where they have an overlap with another piece of siding. A lot of times I will go all the way in. It can still expand in one direction, but you have to be really careful if you do that. Because it only expands in one direction, if you hook the nail fan or if you drive a nail tight, there's going to be zero forgiveness. If you do it down there, you're going to see oil canning all the way across. So they say to go a 1/4 inch back if it's warmer out, 3/8 if it's colder out. What I like to do is I like to actually go in tight like I said, but I'll actually put a nail on this end here, real close to this side, the left side of the nail hole. And the reason why I do this is so that as the piece heats up and expands and contracts, they actually tend to walk around on the wall. And I've actually had a piece of siding come out of the corner that was nailed correctly. And so you'd see a gap here, a gap right here between the corner and the siding, and you can see the end of the siding, and that's just no good. So I like to put a nail about a 1/4 inch from the left side of the slot right there so that I know the siding can never fully walk out of the corner. And now we're going to get the rest of this row on, and we'll give you a sight down it after it's done. So now we'll show you just how straight this came out right here. And that's the advantage of using starter strip and starting up here, is you know you're going to be dead straight right across there. So as I was saying before, this is new construction. Everything's pretty flat and level. Some new construction things actually aren't flat or level. I've seen things like this right here pitch down an inch, so that can throw off your coursing. And so that is something you want to pay attention. It's something you want to look for. Make sure that things aren't getting really out of whack. It would be a good idea maybe to run a level across as a reference line, so you can know that you're heading level. But I know that these are pretty good, and this is a gable end. So as you can see up there, it comes to a point and there's no real spot where you're gonna see if the siding is tipping even an inch or inch and a half. If it's out of level, actually, you're never really gonna pick up on it because there's no place for you to pick up on it. The sides may be on that window right there. You might see something there, but the most you'd see, even if it was pitching an inch and a half, would be an 1/8 inch on that window. So you're not really gonna pick up on that. But like I said, this is pretty flat and straight. If you have an old house and you have your flat eaves coming down and you have a straight line across the top of your wall, you might want to check with your tape measure from end to end and see if it's changing. So you could actually set your measurements the same on either side to start your corners and potentially end up in a lot better shape. So moving on to what we're doing here, we're going to continue with the layout. And now we have a baseline to start off from. And we can pull all our measurements from there. Over here, we know we have a 2-foot drop. So I'm going to butt against the siding, and we know that the piece of siding is going to be down there. You want to make sure that you're holding your tape perpendicular to this siding here. So 2 foot, that's the bottom of the starter. It's actually going to be up a little bit from that 2-foot mark. And then what we want to do is come up the 2.5 inches that the starter strip is. So we'll go 2 foot, that's 23, 22, 21.5. That's the top of the starter for over here. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. 21.5. And I can chalk a line there. And that's going to be the top of the starter. Now, if anything, I want to be a little bit high with this. And I'm talking like a 1/16 of an inch. That way, when I get to this point right here, I'll be able to clip that last piece in. So that's where I want that piece of starter strip. And then again, we know that this is 5 feet down. And this one's going to be a little bit different because we're not going to use starter down at the bottom here. And I'll try to keep this as simple as I can. What we need to know is how big this nail fin is right here. From the bottom of the clip, from the bottom of that clip to the top of the nail fin, we have 1.25 inches. Maybe a little bit more than 1.25 inches. So we just need to remember that. 1.25 inches strong also means a little bit more. So now we're going to measure down on our 8-inch increment. We'll go over here because this is the edge of the wall. We're going to butt against the bottom there. And we have 5 foot is down here. And then we have, so that's down on top of the foundation quite a bit. 4 foot we know is on an 8-inch increment. So we know 4'8" is going to be the top or the bottom of that siding down here. So 4'8". Then we need to come up to get to the top of the nail fin that 1.25 inches. And then we can chalk a line down here at the 1.25 inches higher than layout, and then we can just nail that top of the siding right there, and I'll show you in a minute when we get to that. We got to do the same thing over here. And now, all things being equal like they're supposed to be, I'm actually going to end up with a 4-inch piece on the bottom here. So I actually should be able to measure up from the bottom of that corner, basically 5.25, maybe a little bit more than 5.25, but we'll measure down from the top here. We'll do the same way. We'll go that 4'8" right there, and then come up that 1.25 inches to get to the top of that nailing fin. And yeah, we have 5.5 there, so I was pretty close. And now this Tyvek is a little bit rumply, and we don't want to chalk a line across wrinkly Tyvek because it'll throw the line off. We have our lines for our layout now. We have the top of the siding there, and then we have the top of the starter over there. And now what we're going to do is we're going to figure out where we want to put the J channel at the bottom of the wall here. So now we're going to get the J channel on, and what we need to establish is how tall the J channel is here on the nail fin. And you can see right there we have 1.75 inches. Now, I want it to go down pretty low, that way it wouldn't be up inside the corner too high. But we're going to have to go up higher than I want to, because I'm going to need to be able to nail that. So we need to be at least a good 1/2 inch above the bottom of the plywood. So we're going to make a new mark, and I'm actually going to go 3/4 above the bottom of the plywood. And I'm getting a bunch of marks here now, but we know that little tiny mark there is my mark that I want. Now we're going to measure down from the siding, and again, that's what's nice about having the siding there, is we have a reference point now. And we're right at 57 7/8. So I'm going to make the same mark down the other end, and we're going to go ahead and snap a line for the top of our J channel. 57 7/8 right there. And now this J channel isn't going to taper at all. There'll be a nice straight cut across there. The cut in reference to, or the rip size in reference to the J channel isn't going to change. In fact, we'll be so confident in that we'll be able to take one measurement and cut the siding at that. Now you can see by the way we marked that out. Oh, we actually have 23 3/4. It was supposed to be 24. This side's a little closer. So something happened there. But not a big deal. We can bop it down a little bit. Make it a little bit tighter. Yep, now we're a lot closer. In fact, it is angled out a little bit. So we're right on 24. That should work out just fine. So this piece I call a drop catcher, and that's just to cover any edges of the foundation and help make this corner a little bit more waterproof. Usually there's a bit of a step here, but this one's pretty flat actually. So I'm going to flatten this thing out. And we'll tuck it under there. And I'm going just a little bit below the bottom of the starter here. And about the same as the corner actually. And I'm just going to use my torpedo level to make this thing level. And it should be close enough. And we know we have a 2-foot drop right here. So I'm going to mark the back side of the trough of this J-channel at 2 foot. And that'll work out just fine. Now I'm going to cut basically 1 inch beyond there. And then I'm going to match the profile of the siding with the snip in the trough here. And kind of angle a little bit right there. And you can see that's tapered a little bit. And that should match the siding profile pretty close. And you can see how that looks at the top now. And I'm just using this metal to ensure that this J-channel is running plumb. And I'll run it to the bottom of that metal as well. And I'm just going to the edge of it there. And I'll put this top nail at the top of the slot. And then let the other ones be in the middle. And leave them a little loose so the J-channel can expand downwards. I haven't really had an issue with J-channel expanding. But where I can, I'll let it expand. So now we're going to get this J-channel on here. And I'm just going to grab a quick measurement, and I'm going to make it too long on purpose. So we'll go 40 inches. And we're probably going to go ahead and caulk the edge of this J-channel to the foundation afterwards. And I'm just going to make this corner and keep this inside together. And you can see how we can turn that corner, keeping it together. And now it's time to just nail this on. I'm going to butt it against that shelf there and let it do what it wants. Might fall down, but that's okay. Right on cue. And now I'm just going to center my nail. That way I can drag it one way or the other as I need to. This is just to get it held up for me so I can deal with that end and get the end where I want it. And I'm going to notch out that top just like I did the other piece. And I'm getting that right on the line there. Kind of hard to see. And now we'll notch this in place, just the same way we did the other one. So now I have this J channel on here, and I'm just going to check the measurement down to it in a couple of spots, and it should stay the same because the way we made it. Looks like about 4.5 will be good. Make sure you get all the way down in there. Yep, we're at 4 3/4 there. And 4.5 there. Yeah, we're good. I'm going to run with 4.5 all the way across this, and I'll be back when I'm putting the thing on. And that's the top of the nail fin, because that's where we marked to. So right here, 4.5, right there. And I can just kind of go like that to mark it out, and then I'm going to cut it, and I'll be back when I'm putting it up. So I have the top of the piece that I ripped off, measuring to the top of the nail fin, and this is going to go right down inside of that J pocket and into the corner. And now I'll show you what it measures to once we get this thing nailed on. When I hook where that next piece is going to clip in, we're right at 4'8", which is exactly on for 8-inch reveal siding or 8-inch coursing. So I'm going to finish this off. I'm going to side it up to this point, and I'll show you what the transition looks like. So a pro tip for you guys is when you have a situation like this over here, if you try to slip the siding through there, it's going to get caught on that. So what I do is I take this right here and I just nip this at an angle. Just like that. Now it should slide right on there. That little angle will direct it on there. Just like that. You wouldn't believe how long I've fought that before. That's it. Another thing to keep in mind is as you go, probably every couple pieces, what you want to do is hook this clip here and measure up to the bottom of your piece there. Right there, I'm a little bit short of 16, and that's going to work out perfect. You just make sure you're running on an 8-inch increment as you go across there. And if you're seeing it get short or long, you can actually maybe pull up a little harder on the pieces, or maybe let them sag down a little bit. You don't want to go more than an 1/8 inch of letting it sag down, and you're not going to be able to get more than a 1/16 pulling them up as hard as you can. Alright, so we made it up to the last piece, and I'm going to pretend like I can't just take this piece down. I'm going to pretend like I already sided the whole wall, and we're just going to fish this piece up in there and nail it. But first we need to take off those little chunks of starter. So all I need to do is slip my hand in there and just pull that down, just like that, and then curl it up. And then make sure that that's nice and flat so it doesn't bubble the panel right there. So I got most of it on now. And honestly, I missed the mark a little bit right there, but if I have to shift that piece over there down a little bit, it's going to be okay. I wanted to show you how to get this part on right here, because this little section gets a little tricky. So what I do is I already have my piece cut to length. All I'm going to do is take and cut off this clip right here for a good section of it. That way I don't have to engage that clip. Because if you try to engage this clip right here all the way to this point, you'll never get it. So I backed it off a bit, and now I'll be able to get it in there. You're probably not going to be able to nail all the way to the end of the piece here. If you can get a nail angled up in there, maybe a foot back, that's going to be just fine. You don't want to bend it too much right in this area, because you'll put a crease or you'll end up breaking the siding. And now you'll be able to see zipping this in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to push up on this bottom piece to move it up a little higher, and then gently pull down on this. It's really cold right now, so I wouldn't be too surprised if this piece broke. But I'm going to try my best to not break it. And you might have heard a little click right there. That means it's going in. And there it goes. Now I'm actually going to start from the other end and do the same thing. And these parts are always a little tricky, getting past the joint. That's it, it's zipped in. And there you have it. Got the whole thing done. And now we're ready to start going right up the rest of the wall. And that's how you can get a really straight line. And it's pretty foolproof. As long as you keep measuring to the siding that's already on the wall that you know is straight, you're going to end up with a nice, straight, clean job.